5. Refers to the damage to our body. Is a general term that refers to harm caused by accidents, falls, hits, weapons, and more.
Is a dance which is recreational and usually performed with a partner and in a group or as a community activity for fun and enjoyment. Rest the injured part, especially for the first 24 to 48 hours after the injury. This is the most critical treatment. Avoid any activity that causes pain or makes it worse. Use crutches if the leg, foot, or ankle is injured. Support an injured wrist, arm, or shoulder with sling. Tape an injured toe or finger to its healthy neighbor. can occur from either a quick one-time injury to the bone, acute fracture, or from repeated stress to the bone over time stress. on our lesson. Now let us have our post-test. Direction: give the meaning of each letter from the first aid of RICE method. R I C E